Okay, sharp intake of breath. Hello and welcome to Toby Jones Talks Music. I am Toby Jones and around here we talk about music. And for those of you who might well be new around here, welcome, hello. My favourite singer-songwriter is Neil Diamond, so we're going to be taking a look at one of his albums once again today. And the reason that I said that it was a sharp intake of breath at the start of this video is that this isn't going to be all that positive. This is about his 2001 effort, Free Chord Opera. Now, if I'd have recorded this video last night when I'd listened to the album, this would have been a far more negative, frustrated, maybe even angry review. But I've licked my wounds overnight. I thought, no, let's not do it on the spot. I made some notes overnight. I've come back at it this morning, read a little bit more about the album, and I'm going to try and put a positive spin on this, in as much as I'm not going to try and fool anybody and say that this album is better than it is, at least in my opinion. But what I'm going to try and do is talk about the positives on this album. What can you take from Free Chord Opera? It's certainly not an album, at least for me, that delivers like a full Neil Diamond effort like previous ones have, like the likes of his best, like Beautiful Noise, that you can listen all the way through and everything is solid. This certainly is not one of those albums, but there are a few songs that you can definitely cherry pick from 2001's Free Chord Opera and have a really good time with. So let's have a look a little bit at the background before this album, Free Chord Opera, released in 2001. So I talked about in a previous video, and this is kind of related, On the Way to the Sky from 1981. And after the Jazz Singer soundtrack in 1980, it's fair to say that Neil Diamond really never had the same level of success again, probably until 2008's Home Before Dark that went to #1 in the UK charts. So this time was a bit of a barren period for Neil Diamond, and immediately before releasing this Free Chord Opera album, for me at least, I think the alarm bells sound from the fact that he did this in, I think this was 99, 98, 99? Yeah, it says 98 on the CD, the movie album, As Time Goes By. And that rings big alarm bells for me, because you have to say, where's the creative inspiration, where's the creative input from Neil Diamond here to do a movie album? We'd already seen a Christmas album in the 90s. I think we had 2 volumes of those Christmas albums in the 90s. We had a covers album of songs from the Brill Building in the early 90s as well. We did have a couple of original albums. We had Lovescape and Tennessee Moon in the 1990s. But nevertheless, it is more flirting towards cover songs, and particularly with this. I bought this quite a few years ago now and have never ever listened to it in full. So that might be something for me to visit. But I can just kind of tell really that this isn't going to be one of Neil Diamond's best efforts, unfortunately. So what Free Chord Opera does well from a start point is the fact that this is Neil Diamond's first album of all original songs written by him since 1974's Serenade. Now, in that's correct, factually correct, but a little bit misleading, because he did go more for co-writes, particularly going into the 80s, but still wrote a lot of his own stuff, albeit with help of others. Beautiful Noise in 76, all of that was Neil Diamond's own written stuff, apart from Dry Your Eyes, the last track, that was co-written by producer Robbie Robertson for that album. Yes, there are co-writes on albums like The Best Years of Our Lives, but the only cover on that album is Baby Can I Hold You. So it is a bit misleading possibly to say that this is Neil Diamond's first original album for 27 years. Yes, it is his first wholly original album for 27 years, but there are still a lot of albums in between that have got a lot of Neil Diamond penned songs on them. The big problem Neil had, and you can feel sympathetic to this in the way that Free Chord Opera goes, is that he suffered from quite a bad bout of writer's block after his last album, Tennessee Moon, in 1996, and couldn't really shake it. Maybe that's why he did something like the movie album in the late 90s. But then he got an offer which he couldn't refuse for a film called Saving Silverman, which featured the likes of Jack Black, and that was to write a song for this film and feature in a cameo role. So he wrote a song for this film, very much a song to order in the Brill Building style of the 60s, and that was called I Believe in Happy Endings, which played over the credits reel. But after writing this track and dusting his writer's block off, that very much gave him the confidence and creative force then to go and write more music. And in the common Neil Diamond reference book that you see around here, David Wilde calls this an undervalued album. I wouldn't necessarily say the same, but you'll have to see what I think when I go into the album more in full. But David writes something similar to what I thought, and that's probably a new thought from this morning, going through this and going again and going with new insight possibly, that okay, this isn't... What can we gain from this album? Is it just an effort like the movie album to just put a Neil Diamond name on it and sell records? And I thought, no, maybe it isn't, because this was a precursor to what was a far more successful, at least creatively, period for Neil Diamond. We had to wait quite a few years, but then he went and contributed with Rick Rubin, so we had 12 songs from 2005. I don't know this all that well, I have to say. Then we had, as I talked about briefly before, Home Before Dark in 2008. This is a good album. He then did a live album, his third Hot August Night album, New York City. That's a good, solid live album, at least for this period. I have covered this on the channel before. I'd actually forgotten about this before I got this out this morning. He did do another covers album in 2010, Dreams, and I haven't listened to this for a while, so I don't want to say anything too hastily, but I thought this was okay. There were some good versions on this, particularly Midnight Train to Georgia and A Song for You, and then the album where it all started for me for Neil Diamond. I covered this recently, Melody Road. So when you compare that run of albums to what came possibly in the 90s and even before that, that is a much stronger run of albums. And if it is Free Chord Opera that started that off for Neil Diamond in terms of his songwriting, writer's block coming back again, then great, because I'm not familiar at all with Tennessee Moon. I haven't listened to everything by Neil Diamond. I know most of the stuff, but I'll openly, with open arms, say I'm not that familiar with 12 songs, and I'm not familiar at all with Tennessee Moon. That's one of the albums that I've still got to go and discover for myself. But from what I understand, Tennessee Moon flirts more with country music style, and this, at least with some of the tracks, comes more back to a Neil Diamond style. There wasn't a specific Neil Diamond style, and that's why I think it's so hard to pigeonhole him into a certain category. He did go and explore different genres, but generally speaking, he then came back to what he was really good at. Ballads, his lyrics, the music, the compositions, they all had a certain style. Certainly a lot of his better tracks. You look at the 60s, they were more contemporary of the time, more rocky tunes, possibly pop rock tunes. The 70s, he leaned more into the ballads, in the introspective songs, the likes of you, If You Know What I Mean from Beautiful Noise or I Am I Said, really developing a really strong songwriting prowess. So this does, therefore, bring Neil Diamond back as a more creative force. These are all Neil Diamond songs. So there's 12 songs on this album. I haven't played this song in years. Don't Look Down. I Believe in Happy Endings, which was the one that was written for the Saving Sylvan film. At the Movies, Midnight Dream, You Are the Best Part of Me, Baby Let's Drive, My Special Someone, A Mission of Love, Elijah's Song, Leave a Little Room for God, and Turn Down the Lights. And I had heard this before. I probably heard this pretty early on in my Neil Diamond listening career, if you like. I decided to pick this up yesterday because I hadn't heard it for a while. I wondered why I hadn't heard it for a while. I thought, because it's not one of those albums that I go to all that often. Maybe that was possibly telling me something from the start, that possibly I shouldn't have gone for it. But I was going to listen to Melody Road while I was doing my morning workout. And I thought, no, let's go for something a little bit different. I know that this album is quite front-loaded, at least from the track listing of what I know and enjoy from this album. So I thought, let's re-listen to it again. Let's see if there's anything deeper in the deeper cuts in this album as we go on. The few songs that I enjoyed on this album when I first listened to it all that time ago were the first track, I Haven't Played This Song in Years, I Believe in Happy Endings, and You Are the Best Part of Me. And apart from that, possibly apart from My Special Someone, looking at this before I listened to it, I was like, I don't really know these songs all that well. And what I'm going to say is, that's not particularly a surprise, because this is certainly not Neil Diamond's strongest effort. It feels like there's a handful of good songs here, and one very, very good song. But really, this isn't all that great, and not one I'll be coming back to anytime soon. So I felt it was time to review this. I want to get round to doing all of Neil Diamond's albums on the channel at some point. So I thought, well, I've listened to it a couple of times. I don't want to be nasty here or really blunt. I don't particularly want to do it again as a full album. So I thought, right, now's the time to look at Free Chord Opera. So this starts brilliantly with I Haven't Played This Song in Years. It was one of my favourites, as I touched on a little bit earlier when I first heard the album, and it is standing on its own pedestal as by far the best song on this album. If this had come out as a single before the album was released and I was there at the time, I would have been so excited for this because I haven't played this song in years. Well, it's probably the best song Neil Diamond has done in years. Lyrically, compositionally, Neil just seems to find the old Neil Diamond formula. It's to me a bit of an unspoken formula, but it sounds so good. And lyrically, it's brilliant. Really, really like it. This counts probably... Does it count as Neil Diamond's top 10, top 15? Probably not. But as a latter period song, it's very, very strong. Don't Look Down's the second song, which has got a nice feel, a nice groove with a decent guitar solo. The lyrics aren't the best and play more to Neil's, I don't want to say cringeworthy style, but you know what I mean. More sort of palatable, middle-of-the-road style. But it's mostly acceptable, and I wrote in my notes here, would I play this outside this album? Probably not. I believe in happy endings. It's got that schmaltz, kind of what you might expect with some of the 80s Neil Diamond stuff, but it's certainly more than okay. It's a decent song. When you put it, as I said, with I haven't played this song in years, it does fall compared to that, but yeah, it's good. Then we go to At the Movies, which was the first one that I thought, no, this is definitely a miss. Starts with movie show. I mean, for me, what does this song deliver? What was the intention with this song? The sound is actually quite contemporary, but I just don't think it suits Neil Diamond at all. The lyrics are somewhat interesting, but it's definitely a miss. Definitely a miss for me. Midnight Dream, it's better than At the Movies, but kind of plods along for me and doesn't really go anywhere. You Are the Best Part of Me, the sixth song, it's definitely more palatable. More Neil-like, what you would expect from Neil Diamond. I have to say, the almost Hawaiian Caribbean sound of this, with some of the instruments used on this, do gripe me a little bit, and I'm not as mad about this as I would have been some years ago. But it's certainly, I'll say good, decent, good. Yeah, okay. Baby Let's Drive was okay, decent. It starts a bit like At the Movies, and then you're thinking, oh god, here we go again. But it's a step up from that, actually. It's okay. It's a bit groovy, it's a bit funky. And one thing I'll say about this album is that at least Neil tried something a little bit different here. I think we'll talk about the next song in relation to this. But when I did On the Way to the Sky a couple of weeks ago, one of my critiques is that everything sounds very samey, it's very safe, it's very commercial, and there are a lot of ballads. But at least this tries something different. With At the Movies, it's got a bit of a different sound. Don't Look Down's a bit more upbeat. Baby Let's Drive is a little bit funky. It's okay though. It's okay, but it's not great. My Special Someone, the 8th track on this album. I think I'd struggle to listen to an album that's full of songs like My Special Someone, which is a little bit like On the Way to the Sky feels, but it's probably a welcome break actually on this album to some of the songs that have come before, and it's decent. Again, is it one of Neil's best? No. Is it essential? No, but it's okay. We then go to A Mission of Love, and Neil Diamond, I love Neil, and there are some songs that are a little bit on the eye-rolly side, but I'm willing to defend them. This one ain't one of them. Give me an L, give me an O, give me a V, da-do-da-da. No, this is beyond, this is beyond defendable. Really is for Neil Diamond, so no. Elijah's song, it plods along and just doesn't go anywhere, and the nice sentiment about this is that this is written for what was his new grandson at the time. I do share some fondness here that this album was released in the year of my birth, so Elijah, I think he's, I guess, about 6 months older than me. When I was listening to this song, because I wanted to probably get it out of my head, I went over to Elijah's Instagram page, and he's certainly a Neil Diamond lookalike, particularly with his eyes. Leave a Little Room for God. It's almost a gospel church song again. No. And then Turn Down the Lights. It's okay. It's decent, but nothing more than that. And I think with Neil Diamond, us fans that love Neil Diamond don't accept just okay. And I think that's what the problem was, maybe at this period, maybe before the 80s and the 90s, that the stuff was just okay. It was middle of the road. It was listenable. It didn't take any risks like Taproot Manuscript might have done in the early 70s, or Brother Love's Travelling Salvation Show. Or heck, that one went completely wrong. But something like the Pot Smoker song on Velvet Gloves and Spit, there are some minor risks taken here with the likes of At the Movies and Baby Let's Drive. But stylistically, it is all very samey and probably quite middle of the road. And even when he does take that risk with At the Movies, does it work? No. There's 12 songs on this album, and possibly this might well work as a 8 or 9 song album. I'm not sure how long this comes in at. I think it might be maybe something like 3 parts of an hour. It certainly did feel longish. 47 minutes. So I think that you could trim at least 3 or 4 songs off this and have a half decent 7 or 8 track album. So the first 3 would definitely qualify. I haven't played this song in years, Don't Look Down, and I Believe in Happy Endings. You can take At the Movies off. You can take A Mission of Love off. Leave a Little Room for God. And maybe Elijah's song. And that still leaves A Mission of Love. So you've got the first 3, Midnight Dream, You Are the Best Part of Me, Maybe Let's Drive, My Special Someone, A Mission of Love, and Turn Down the Lights. Maybe that might have been a little bit more palatable. I think that is the problem, that this album is quite front-loaded. Maybe if you had something like Don't Look Down a little bit further on, it would then bring this album up a little bit more. The mid-term of this album, when you look at You Are the Best Part of Me, Baby Let's Drive, and My Special Someone, that's not a bad mid-section to the album, but then the last 4 songs not being really my thing, you've kind of got to the half an hour-ish point of this album, just over, and you keep going, and it's like... Not well. It is. It's very much kind of just let this end. I'm not here anymore. But as I said at the start, this starts Neil Diamond's creative force coming back. So at least it does that. That's a real positive about this. To then develop into some of his 21st century work, which I'm not all that familiar with, and I've said before, I do prefer Neil's 70s and 80s stuff. But at least it does start this run of albums off, which is a pretty strong album, or at least a pretty strong latter period run of albums for Neil Diamond. There's going to be somebody out there who loves free chord opera, and I'm quite glad that I've revisited this actually, because I wasn't quite sure what I thought of this album. At least it's documented down there that I think, right, I don't think I'm going to revisit it again. There's possibly half an album that I'd revisit. I'll say it again, the first 3 tracks. Maybe Midnight Dream could win me over. You Are the Best Part of Me, Baby Let's Drive, that's a bit of fun, and My Special Someone. So there's 7 tracks out of the 12 that I might revisit here. There's 1 really good track, there's possibly 2 or 3 that are good below it, and then 2 or 3 that are decent, but the rest of this doesn't really do anything for me, which is frustrating and a shame more than anything. But this was a period where Neil was very prolific touring-wise. I've picked up a box set recently, which I'll show briefly on this video, although I want to cover it on another video, which is stages, 1970 to 2002, which is a little bit misleading in its title, because actually a lot of this is more towards the 21st century. So the first 2 discs is a concert live in Las Vegas in December of 2002. The 6th disc is highlights of a concert from a Lansdowne Road concert in 2002. And there are a few of these songs on the live album. I listened to that the other day on a drive. So A Mission of Love's on here. Yeah. I haven't played this song in years. You Are the Best Part of Me. That's it that features. So the fact that nothing else features might suggest that Neil either didn't feel too strongly about it, because it's a very long concert. It's over 2 hours of material. So there's 30 tracks, 2 of them being Sweet Caroline, because of course we have to have that twice. For a 10th of these songs, well, there's an overture as well, so possibly 29. But let's run on the margin of 10%. For only 10% of these to be from his new album, Free Chord Opera, suggests that possibly Neil didn't have the hope in the song of this album, the confidence in the songs from this album. But nevertheless, it's been an interesting period for me yesterday to go and listen to this a couple of times, and I think that's where I'm going to leave for Free Chord Opera. It'll go back up there on the shelf because it's well deserving of being on my Neil Diamond shelf. I've got no problem with that. I actually had to go up to the loft to get this one out, because at one point I thought, I don't think I'm ever going to listen to this. But that might be one that I'll go and revisit. I'll put it in the revisit pile, or visit for the first time, because I don't think I've heard it once in full. if you're going to click on a video where I review that, I say that might be an even more negative review of this one. When I was looking at this last night and possibly recording this video, I thought, I'm not sure whether I want to do it, because what I want to do around here is talk positively about music that I love. I feel that's when I'm at my best, and I don't like talking about something that I don't like. But I thought, you know what? Let's do it. Let's talk about why I don't like them. We can have a conversation down in the comments. There might be some of you that love this, and that's brilliant, because if there's something that I don't like, but someone gets value out of this, or somebody thinks I haven't heard this for a while and goes and revisits it, and then has a good time with it, that is very, very good with me. This is probably one of Neil Diamond's weaker efforts. I spoke some years ago, and that was one of the videos that put me off talking too negatively about an album, and that was September Morn. And I had a few comments that went, well, they weren't too pleased about what I was talking about, and that's fair, and I've took that to heart a little bit, and being the positive person that I am, sometimes, I do like to talk about the positive stuff, the stuff that I enjoy, because that is where the passion for music comes from, isn't it? Stuff that you don't enjoy, you're not going to listen to again, and I don't think I will listen to this again. But nevertheless, this is an important point in Neil Diamond's catalogue, a bit of a turning point, and without Free Chord Opera, do we get Home Before Dark and Melody Road? Possibly not. We might still have been getting Neil Diamond covers albums. Hell, we might have waited 9 years after this, just got Dreams, and that might well have been where Neil Diamond bowed out, in an alternate universe where we didn't have Free Chord Opera. Who knows? But we're available on all the good social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, X, and we've also got a TikTok account there as well. So to get alerts of when the new videos are coming on the channel, if you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, you will get alerts of when all new content goes on the channel. But those social media channels as well, I do put a post up whenever I post a new video, so YouTube isn't the beast that it used to be. A lot of people don't use their subscriptions feeds anymore, so even if you are subscribed, you might not see this video in your recommended page. And if you're out and about, or would just prefer to listen to this as an audio podcast, I've got no problem with that. This is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I think it's available on Amazon Podcasts if you use that. But I think generally speaking that Spotify and Apple Podcasts are the main two podcast providers. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Free Chord Opera, albeit there's light and shade on this album. I think that's probably an understatement, but it's been an enjoyable look nevertheless, and another album in Neil Diamond's catalogue. There'll be a video up there for you to go and explore, but whether you do or whether you don't, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Go and listen to some Neil Diamond, will you? And one track, of course, I'd recommend for this album is I Haven't Played This Song in Years.